I don't know if that's the case in other countries as well, but in Poland, I think a lot of people, the ones who haven't heard your albums, know you from the song My Number. What would you say to them? How would you convince them to actually listen to the whole album and check you
Because
out?
there's much better songs on the album than My Number.
Really? You
Yeah.
don't like My Number?
Oh, it's fine. You know, I liked it a few years ago. I mean, I
Not
don't know. It's
anymore.
weird. It stops. But I don't know. I don't even think of it as a song anymore. It's weird. You know, I'm sure when I'm an old man, I'll listen to it and be like, oh, that's nice.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, but you know, yeah. Well, I just think, you know, we don't just sound like My Number. In fact, we sound totally different in some places.
Your style is described as indie rock, and here in Poland it would be pretty easy to break through because we don't have many indie rock artists, but in England
It's quite
every
a few, yeah.
band is indie rock. So how did you manage to break through?
I guess it's like a combination of, you know, being in the right place at the right time, like an element of luck. And I think we were doing something like our music, even though it's indie rock, I guess it sounded kind of different to everyone else. So we were unique in a way that enabled us to sort of separate ourselves from all the other bands.
In what way?
Well, there's a lot of
separates you?
there's a lot of indie rock bands in the UK, but there's a lot of indie rock bands that, say, for example, sound like the Libertines or things like that. You know, like maybe bands that were like directly influenced by like the Smiths and then decided to try and sound exactly like the Smiths or the Clash, or, you know, like there's a heritage of bands in England which is the indie rock thing, which people just tend to sort of copy each other, and we tried not to do that.
When you guys were making your first record, you rejected the producer's mix. It was a pretty bold move for the band that is just recording their debut album. So do you feel like making such difficult decisions actually gives you more control over yourself, who you are as a band, and your music?
Yeah, definitely. I think you have to kind of make those kind of tough decisions sometimes, because as things kind of escalate and the band gets bigger, like certain decisions are quite easy to slip out of your hands. And we've always been kind of control freaks about a lot of stuff, about the whole band aesthetic and where we go and play. And I think quite often, yeah, you have to sort of take that control back a little bit. But that example of the mixes was something that was like, you know, it was our first record. We were being, you know, really, really precious about it. We've just had this thing back that we'd been looking forward to for so long, and, you know, had not been there for the mixing. So I think because it was out of our hands, it was a bit of a shock to hear something back that had kind of carried on and changed into this thing that we weren't there in the studio for. Because, I mean, we'd never do that nowadays. We'd always make sure that we were there and, you know, present for that. So, yeah, looking back at it, I haven't listened to it for a while, but looking back at it, we probably loved those mixes as well as like an alternate.
Well, we only, like, it was kind of annoying. Like, we had one listen to the mixes. I remember they were sent over from America, and we were playing a show in York in the north of England. About like an hour before the show, we had to go sit in the tour van and listen to the CD. And that was it. We had one listen through the whole album, and we had to decide that minute. So I don't know who was responsible for the lateness of that. It's probably Dave, the producer, to be honest. But it was a tough decision. We were like, well, okay, like, I guess we'll do it ourselves.
So when you guys were making Holy Fire, I heard a story that you actually made interns go collect bones.
Yeah, that's true.
Gave them a runaround.
Yeah, well, they were so bored, they didn't have anything to do. So, well, yeah, they did. Well, they didn't have to go very far, because we were on the Willesden High Street, which was just by the studio. There was a bunch of butchers. So they just got some bones and, like, originally left them on the roof of the studio so, like, the birds would, like, clean them. And that didn't really work.
Yeah,
so they had to boil them. I don't know. And it didn't work in the end. They sounded dreadful after like a month's work of cleaning these bones. But it was a nice idea, you know.
Yanis, I guess he does crowd surfing a lot when you guys play. Were there any situations that were, I don't know, dangerous or things get out of hand.
Yeah, definitely been a few. It's harder. There was definitely like a sort of turning point when he used to be able to get in the crowd a lot, and it wouldn't get too hectic. And I think like again, as the band's got bigger and the crowds have got bigger, it's got a bit more dangerous to get in. There was definitely like an indication that it was kind of he can't just jump off balconies all the time anymore, because you know he gets kind of just comes out like he's lost his shoes and his t-shirt and his everything's gone. It's like a jumble sale. But we've hurt people. He's hurt people sometimes, obviously not intentionally, but just from like when there's a big crowd and you get in there.
The worst thing is when you see like big crowds and it's like you have problems with large amounts of people where you can have like a really small movement. So like he'd jump in and like maybe one person would fall over, but you see it like a ripple effect, and then suddenly like 500 people have fallen over, and they've all fallen over on one person, maybe the one person who hates our band, who's looking the other way. And that's when it's really dangerous and it's horrible to see. We've had it a few times where we've had to stop the show, like not always because of Janis jumping in, but it's horrible when you see people actually getting hurt, and it's like it should never happen at a show,